for me, this entire book, this entire project is like closure on 2020. So I'm hoping that the people who interact with it, whether they keep it as a coffee table book or they actually choose to color in it, that for them it will also be a way of just dealing with 2020.
So there I was, sitting at my desk, talking to the technology, when all of a sudden an artist appeared at my window. No, wait, that was a dog. An artist appeared after the dog. And said that you've published a new book.
I published a new book. Yes, I just poof and manifested a new book.
Manifested a new book.
I was supposed to be on vacation. I told everyone that I will take the last of the week, the last of the week,
The last of the week?
the last of the year off and have a vacation.
Right.
Much like someone else I know. But instead, I sat here and I worked on a book.
What's it called? What, is that it?
That is it.
It's called Incandescence?
It's called Incandescence.
Is it a coloring book?
It's tricky.
Uh-oh, it's complicated.
It's complicated.
Okay.
It's complicated. It wasn't designed as a coloring book. It's actually a collection of my art that I made during Inktober 2020.
Mm-hmm.
But as I was sharing my creations during Inktober, people were very insistent that I also make it into coloring pages.
Okay.
So this is a collection of my art that is also colorable.
And how did you come up with the name?
Oh, the name was so much fun. We actually had a giant brainstorming session in Talm, my private community.
Mm-hmm.
And people were just throwing ideas at me. I gave them just the breakdown of what I want the book to convey, what I want the title to convey. And then I had a personal brainstorming session with all the admins, and we came up with Incandescence, which is a play on inkanescence, like the essence of ink art. This is Inktober. But of course, it's spelled very much like incandescence, like luminance, brilliance, as in it's a brilliant work of art. Artists are not conceited at all. But also the literal meaning of brilliance. There's a lot of reference in this book to glow and light and the light of hope amidst all the darkness.
Okay, so that's interesting. You're talking about both darkness and light.
Yes.
A lot of your work is, to be honest, pretty dark.
It's a little dark.
It's a little dark, but it's dark in like a lighthearted, humorous kind of way. Does this follow that, or did you deviate in some way?
No, it's absolutely like you described. It's the element of darkness is quite strong, but it's not linear. It's not just about things being either dark and negative or bright and positive. Art, just like life itself, is a combination of both. You can't have light without darkness. You can't appreciate light without darkness. And you can't really appreciate darkness without losing the light. So the two are constantly playing off each other. So in the book, while I have some images that are straight up dark, like a fishbone, for instance, is a pretty dark image. But there are also images that portray a lot of hope and a lot of energy and life itself. There are a lot of dancing figures, there are a lot of celebrating figures and actual light. I have a page called Flame and another page called Glow. The original art was based on prompts from Inktober. The way that Inktober works is that every day of the month you're given a word and you're supposed to draw something based on your association with that word. So we had words like disgusting and ominous and slippery, and you had to come up with characters based on that. So some of the names I kept, but others like Eye Candy is now a new character.
So it's dark, but it's light and it's hopeful. Did 2020 have any kind of an effect on the content of the book?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. This book wouldn't even exist if 2020 didn't happen the way that it did. Actually, I would probably just continue making my books the way that I usually do, which is I come up with a theme and I design every coloring page with it being intended to be a coloring page. So I make the sketch, I make the character, I make the outlines, and I stay within that theme. So if the theme is fairies, then you have the whole book on fairies. This is entirely based on just the art that came from within during Inktober. It was the first year that I joined it, and it was a challenge for myself to actually draw every day to stick to that routine.
It's only day 5 and it's already getting intense.
To make a time lapse of every drawing, which was a horrible idea. I'm not doing that next year. I was completely exhausted by the end of the month. And nobody even cared about the time lapses. My Inktober project didn't really do so well on YouTube, but it did brilliantly on Instagram and Facebook. All of the still shots that I posted immediately got hundreds and thousands of likes on social media as still shots. And so next year I'm skipping the whole filming stuff and just drawing. But my point is, I didn't intend for any of the drawings to please anyone or to follow any kind of an assignment other than my own personal feeling. So a lot of the art in this book is actually quite emotional. For instance, the prompt Storm came on a day when I had a really horrible day. It was the day I went to Santiago and made that Zombieland video. And I came back and I was really stressed and physically tired. And the prompt was storm, so I drew the storm within. And I kept having this recurring dream all through October where I'm in a crowded room and I just scream and nobody hears me and only this dust comes out and you feel just cold and empty. And that's the depiction of the storm within that ended up being the picture. And I think a lot of people can relate to that kind of frustration in 2020 where you just want to let it all out. I'm also hoping that when people interact with it, they will breathe their own meaning into every single image because there's so much there. In this book, there's a lot of double meanings, a lot of play on words. The titles are all really fun. So every single person who looks at the images, they interpret it in their own way. And when I was posting the images during October, that came out a lot. For instance, the page sleep, some people saw it as straight up death. Some people saw it as enlightenment. And it was completely different. Every single person who saw the page sleep interpreted it in their own way, some in positive ways, some in stressful ways, some in hopeful ways. Like, it's amazing. Like, that's what art is all about. People absolutely should put their own meaning to it.
You've never done a Grayscale book before. Why the sudden change?
I have not. In fact, I was very insistent on not ever doing Grayscale because I can't control the outcome of the printing of it for the people who are printing PDFs. My experience with people printing Grayscale is that everyone comes out with a different quality print, and in the end, not everyone gets the best experience because maybe their printer is set to too light or too dark, and then the image is not the way that it was intended. But I realized after all these years that people actually really love Grayscale, and they really love my Grayscale. When on occasion I offer a Grayscale image, it's a huge success. And the fact that maybe 2% of my fan base is not going to get a perfect print isn't a good enough reason to take it away from the rest of them.
Your books are adult coloring books.
Correct.
Is this one also adult?
It is. It has, if you're a person who is afraid of boobs, do not get this book. Which there are people out there who are not really into nudity and the female form. A lot of my art has nudity in it, but like artistic nudity. To me, it's obscene that we have to cover nipples and butts and drape our women in drapery. I grew up on classical art, on marble statues and Michelangelo's bodies all intertwined. Like, to me, that's just natural. So yes, the book has nudity, and of course, all female characters have sexuality, but it is not an erotic book. So it's not like adult, but certainly it is designed for adults.
It's always difficult to explain adult coloring book to people.
Right.
It's like, well, it's an adult coloring book. That doesn't mean it's like adult.
Right.
But it's like a coloring book for adults.
But it's also for adults in the sense that it is very dark. And for instance, I was talking with one of my colorists the other day, and he said that his niece, who's in high school, saw the prints and was very much interested in the book. And I'm like, well, do you think maybe it's a little too adult for her? Like, the darkness of it, I think, is also a little bit too intense for people maybe under 18. I don't know. People mature pretty quickly these days, though. I think the adults who buy this book should make their own judgment on whether they should share it with their kids. It's definitely not for kids. That I can tell you straight up.
Yeah. Would you ever do a kid's book?
I have done a kid's book. I have one kid's book, Lisa's Lovable Wildlings. I have it. I did it. I probably won't do another one because I tend to overwork it. I add too much detail, and I haven't narrowed down my kids' drawing style yet.
I think you should.
I should.
I think you should.
Maybe like a gothic kids coloring book.
So let's talk about the content of the book. What were some of the more difficult pages to draw or to transfer into coloring pages?
Some were very difficult, and actually not all of them even made it into the book. But the ones that I kept that I struggled with were the abstract concepts, like dizzy and slippery. They were difficult to draw to begin with when they were the Inktober prompts. It's like how do you draw dizzy? The way that I drew them, they have a lot of texture and motion. Like dizzy is an actual blurry image, and transferring that into line drawing with grayscale was tricky. And slippery is a rainy scene, so that actually took a lot of trial and error. I had my admins, each one with their own printer, printing it on different paper, printing it on different settings, and I reworked that page 3 or 4 times before we settled on the final design. So they helped out a lot with that. But I ended up keeping it. It's a very odd page. It's definitely not a traditional coloring page, but I think it will be interesting and challenging for a lot of people.
Where do you get your ideas?
I'm not really sure. They come from deep within somewhere, but I'm a very visual person. So for me, when I heard the words, the prompt words, I pretty much saw the final images right away when the first prompt was fish, and immediately I just had that character in front of me, so I just copied what I saw. I have no idea where all that stuff comes from. It's always in my head. It's always around me. It's if these were audible characters, it would be very loud in my head all the time. But they're mostly just visual.
Do you see finished pieces and then you just sketch them, or do they evolve as you're doing the work?
Sometimes they're finished. Sometimes they're perfectly finalized exactly the way that they will be on the page in my brain, and I'm literally like tracing onto the page what I see. And sometimes they evolve as I'm drawing.
Some of the pages didn't make it.
Right? They didn't make it.
They didn't make it.
They didn't make it.
Like shoes, I think, was one of the ones
Oh,
that you
I
cut.
hated shoes. I hated shoes.
You hate shoes in general.
I hate shoes in general. I'm not a shoe girl at all. One of the challenges that I set for myself for this Inktober challenge was to do everything with women. So when the shoe prompt came up, and it was one of the last ones, so I was already pretty burnt out by the end of the whole experience. And when shoes came up, I was just unable to come up with anything creative with shoes. Now that I think of it, I should have done like a spider in high heels or something, but a female spider, because it all had to do with women. So as soon as I had shoes and women in the same combination, it just, all I could see was this like shop girl in a mall looking for shoes, and I was totally not cool with that image because it's not me. And most of my characters reflect me in one way or another. So I suffered my way through shoes. I put a combat boot in there to feel a little bit better about myself. But shoes didn't make it into the final cut. But also, some of the characters that weren't my own didn't make it. For instance, one of my favorite pages was Rocket, and that was Tank Girl with a rocket bra. But I couldn't use her because she's Tank Girl. She's somebody else's character.
Is this a book that people can buy physically or only digitally?
Both. As most of my books, or actually I think all of my books, are both available in print and also in my Etsy shop as PDF downloads. And of course, all the links will be in the video description.
What's the one thing you hope this book does for the world?
I think focus. I think what I expect the audience to get out of it most of all is to be able to focus on something that's important to them. So it's not necessarily about getting closure for 2020 or getting closure for stress or dealing with burnout or finding hope or finding just stress relief in the act of coloring. But for each individual person who interacts with it, I hope that they can sense my personal emotion through the art, because it is my most personal book. It's my most honest book that I've released so far. And I hope that that transcends in the pages, and that when they interact with it, they're able to focus on the specific thing that they are hunting down, because it's very unique for every single person. Somebody is looking for peace of mind, somebody's looking for redemption, whatever it is that they're looking for. I hope that the book helps them narrow it down. That's it for me. I think the book mostly speaks for itself, mostly. And even in the introduction of the book, I like to write short intros for all of my volumes. And I stopped myself short of over-explaining what the pages are and the meaning behind each of them. I want people to interact with this book the way that they might with a Christopher Nolan film. You watch it over and over again, and every time you find something new, and it always comes around full circle. There's so many story loops in this book that people will eventually find on their own, and that's what I want. I want them to interact with it.
Well, this has been enlightening. Thank you very much for spending part of your Saturday afternoon with us. Is there anything you'd like to say in closing?
No, this is the part of the interview where I just get scared and want to run.
Press the stop button.
Of course, as soon as the cameras stop rolling, I'll be like, oh, should have talked about that other thing. I'm gonna run now.
Hi.
Hello.
You feel like you're in a job interview or something?
Can you imagine if we actually talked like this at the end of each day?
Like if we just
sit across from each other with the cameras rolling. Be like, hi, how was your day?
How was your day? How was your day?
How was your day?
All right, so you dragged my lame ass in here.
Okay, so we were talking about the darkness of my art and how it's sprinkled with the light of hope.
Sprinkled
With the light of hope. I think the book mostly speaks for itself. Mostly.
It mostly speaks for itself.
It mostly speaks for itself.
What other thing could you do with that visualization skill besides art?
Ooh, wow. I wish someone asked me that when I was in college. Maybe I could make some money.